And now to our interview segment. My guest, Mr. Femi Falana, is the perfect person to talk about human rights and activism, which were just two of several faces in the life of Nelson Mandela. In 2008, Mr. Falana received the prestigious IBA Bernard Simmons Memorial Award for his contribution to the promotion, protection, and advancement of human rights in Nigeria. He joins me on the program now. Let me start by getting your reaction to the death of former South African President Nelson Mandela, especially as we both know that he was also a lawyer.
Well, in President Mandela's death, Africa has lost its greatest leader. Since he stepped down in 1999 as the president of South Africa, he has remained a moral force, a moral reference in a continent largely dominated by all manners of despots, sit-tight leaders, and people who have contempt for the rule of law. Therefore, Africa is going to miss him. The black people will miss him. When we were dismissed as a race of irresponsible people, the likes of Mandela became our saving grace. Now that he's gone, I think it's a challenge, his exit is a challenge to all the progressive forces in the continent to redouble their efforts to produce more Mandelas for the continent, so that impunity can be a thing of the past, so that oppression of man by man can become history. As a lawyer, I'm very proud of him, because unlike most African lawyers, Nelson Mandela did not go to law. He didn't go for legal practice to make money, but to advance the cause of the South African oppressed people. He believed in human rights, but not political and civil rights that we all celebrate. He believed that without the economic empowerment of the people, human rights are esoteric. The South African Constitution, which he championed and which was enacted into law under his government, is the best constitution in Africa today. That constitution is a reference point for those who are committed to constitutional review or rewriting the constitution of a country.
Now let's bring it closer home. Some people have said that perhaps our own late legal icon, late Gani Fawehinmi, perhaps was almost in the same class as the late Nelson Mandela, in the sense that they both used law and activism to better the lot of the society and help the cause of the common man. But why is it that we do not have lawyers of today who possess the same traits as the late Gani Fawehinmi, the late Akaba Sharon, and some others like that?
From time immemorial, we have never had a crowd of progressive lawyers in any country in the world. We could talk of Lenin, Vladimir Lenin of Russia, who led the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. You could talk of Fidel Castro, who led the Cuban Revolution in 1959. Of course, we talk of Mandela now and Oliver Tambo, who led the South African struggle. Of course, we found lawyers in other African continents. The late Obafemi Awolowo, of course, you've mentioned Alao Akaba Sharon, Gani Fawehinmi, you know. There are still lawyers out there who are trying to emulate these great African lawyers. But the training of lawyers remains largely neo-colonial. we are taught in the law school to believe that there is equality before the law and that there is rule of law and that everybody has human rights, freedom of speech. It is only if you are ideologically inclined and you look beyond the surface of the law that you can find and confirm that majority of citizens of our country or majority of Africans have no access to water, no access to equipped hospitals, no food, no shelter, no jobs, and that indeed the future is bleak for young people. It is only when you are able to see that law can be an instrument of fighting injustice, of fighting inequality in the society, that you can team up with other progressive forces, but in other professions, in the political parties, and in the human rights movement, that you really can be relevant
so
in an African setting.
We don't have lawyers who have that ideology. Are you saying we don't have more lawyers who have that ideology to see that law can be used as an instrument for fighting?
In the entire continent, we have few lawyers who believe that law can be used as an instrument of fighting injustice.
Why is that?
Because of the training and the exposure of lawyers. I mean, we're meant to believe that everything is okay, you know, and that there is equality before the law, you know, human rights are inalienable and the rest of them, you know. But
the reality is not so.
The reality is not so.
So it's a problem of legal training.
It's a problem of legal training. And because lawyers are generally not exposed to what you might call radical jurisprudence, it's all about bourgeois jurisprudence.
So what do we need to fix with our legal?
We need to fix our educational system. Can you believe that in 1955, the Law Society of South Africa wrote a petition against Nelson Mandela to the Supreme Court? They wanted him derobed. They wanted his name struck off the roll of South African lawyer because he had been convicted under the Suppression of Communism Act. But the Supreme Court, completely dominated by white judges, sat and refused and threw out the petition on the ground that the rules of professional ethics drawn up by the Law Society did not have the likes of Mandela in mind. Lawyers who were fighting on behalf of the oppressed, lawyers who were defending their people, and that therefore the man cannot be genuinely accused of professional misconduct. And on that basis, he was allowed to continue to practice law. In many other African countries, many progressive lawyers have been jailed for their views, have been detained illegally, have been harassed by their colleagues, have been denied all the rights and privileges that should have been accorded to them.
So if we return back to the problem, which you say is legal training and the bourgeoisie training that we have, and you say that we need to fix our education system, what are the specifics as regards fixing the education system in relation to law now?
Generally, you can ask any undergraduate in Nigeria today to tell you even history students. You can ask them whether they know anything about the Civil War, about military rule in Nigeria. Unless a few of them who have done their own studies. Such vital aspects of our life, colonialism, slave trade, and the rest of them, they are not in the syllabus of our universities. When you are reading law here, lawyers are never told that majority of our people cannot access justice. What you are simply told is, oh, we must have high courts, court of appeal, and Supreme Court. Whereas the majority of our people daily in the country patronize customary courts, magistrate courts, and even alkali courts and courts manned by traditional rulers. And we're not concerned
with those cadres.
With those, cadres of the legal system. Secondly, the whole talk of human rights totally neglect or ignore poverty in the society. You are simply told that, oh, everybody has freedom of expression. But when you are illiterate, we have 10.5 million children now who are roaming the street. What does freedom of expression mean to them, or to the 55 million people who are illiterate in our country? You have right to life. You are not employed. You have no means to, to live your life. So your life is useless. Freedom of movement. Where can you move to when you do not have the money to travel?
So if the problem is
it's only the rich.
The problem is beyond the educational system.
No. The lawyer in training must be made to appreciate the class character of law and why people are poor, why some are rich. And now the gap can be bridged using the resources of our country. And that when Chapter 2 of the Constitution, Section 16, provides that the state shall harness the resources of the country to make all our people happy. And you are told that provision of the law is not justiciable. And so forget about it. But the law should teach us how those provisions of the Constitution can be actualized.
This is education that should start even from the universities before the law.
Oh yes. When I talk of the law school, I mean including the university. Yeah. And that should not be limited to lawyers. Those who are reading medicine must also understand the sociology of, the course you are going through. How come that only a few people can be flown abroad for treatment because our healthcare delivery system has collapsed? And so how do you now get doctors to appreciate that they don't all have to leave the country to make ends meet, that we need to build our country and use our, God-given talents to improve the quality of the life of an average citizen? So that is the kind of functional educational system.
That we should start to have.
Yeah, and then talk about the dignity of labor. How come that our graduates do not hesitate to drive taxis abroad? But here, everybody wants a white-collar job. So, you have to look at our educational system. And so, if you want to produce more Mandelas,
In the continent.
you must change the educational system.